The global fertilizer industry generates over $70 billion a year. $70 billion. That number is printed in the annual reports, cited by analysts, celebrated by shareholders. What it is not, what you will never find mentioned in those reports, is how much of that revenue depends on a single quiet assumption. The assumption that the average gardener does not know what is sitting in their fireplace. A mature hardwood tree, an oak, a hickory, a maple, spends a century with its roots pressed against deep rock. Not the top 6 inches of soil that a tomato plant can reach. Deep rock. Layers that formed before there was such a thing as a garden center. Over that century, the tree extracts calcium, potassium, magnesium, and dozens of trace minerals from stone, dissolves them, and weaves them ring by ring into its own wood. When that wood burns in a fireplace, the carbon goes up in smoke. The minerals cannot burn. They stay behind. Every handful of gray ash by the hearth is the concentrated mineral wealth of 100 years of underground work. Work no synthetic product can replicate. Work that costs nothing. And that is precisely the problem, from the industry's perspective. A product that costs nothing cannot be sold. A resource that every homeowner already has sitting in a bucket by the fire cannot be packaged, branded, marked up, and placed on a shelf under fluorescent lights. So it is not talked about. It is not on the label of any soil amendment at any garden center in this country. The companies that benefit from selling pH correctors, potassium supplements, and calcium sprays at $35 a bag have no financial incentive to explain that hardwood ash delivers all 3 at the same time, for free, from the same fire that heated the house last winter. This is not a conspiracy. It is simply the logic of an industry. You cannot build a $70 billion business on something that comes out of a fireplace. But a home gardener can build a better garden on exactly that. Before getting into the recipe and the step-by-step method, it is worth understanding why wood ash outperforms the lime product it replaces, because the difference is not just price. It is chemistry. Agricultural lime, the standard soil pH corrector sold in every garden center in the country, is calcium carbonate. That is its active ingredient, and essentially its only ingredient. It raises pH, it delivers calcium. It does the one job described on the label and stops there. Hardwood ash is a different substance entirely. Lab analysis of clean hardwood ash consistently shows 20 to 25% calcium carbonate, the same compound found in agricultural lime, but it also carries 5 to 7% potassium, the mineral historically called potash, which drives fruit production, regulates water movement inside the plant, and determines how a tomato ripens. It carries 1 to 2% phosphorus. Measurable amounts of magnesium, iron, manganese, zinc, copper, and boron. And it delivers all of these simultaneously, from a single source, in a form that interacts with soil biology in ways that isolated synthetic minerals cannot. A bag of garden lime does one thing. A bucket of hardwood ash does 7. The bag costs $35 at the garden center. The bucket costs nothing and is already in the house. This is the gap the industry hopes stays invisible. Now, here's the part most online articles about wood ash never tell anyone. The part that has caused more gardening disasters attributed to this ingredient than any other single mistake. Raw wood ash applied directly to soil is not gentle. It is not the forgiving, sprinkle it around and water it in amendment that most gardening tutorials describe. Dry hardwood ash is fiercely, aggressively alkaline. The moment it contacts moisture in soil, it triggers a chemical reaction. The pH spikes sharply, sometimes violently, in the immediate area around the ash. That spike burns feeder roots. Feeder roots are the microscopic hairs that extend from the tips of every root branch. They are the actual point of nutrient absorption, the biological equivalent of the mouth of the plant. Burn them, and the plant stops eating, regardless of how rich the surrounding soil is. Potassium, calcium, phosphorus can all be present in the ground in adequate amounts, and the plant will still yellow, stall, and fail if the feeder roots have been cauterized by a direct application of dry ash. This is the experience that turned a generation of gardeners against wood ash permanently. They tried it once, applied it dry as most tutorials suggest, watched their plants suffer, and concluded the ingredient did not work. The ingredient worked perfectly. It did exactly what dry alkaline powder in contact with moist soil does. The method failed them, not the material. The method that actually works has been in use for centuries, long before the fertilizer industry existed, long before the words pH and potassium carbonate were part of any gardener's vocabulary. It is called a water extraction. Some old books call it lye water, some call it wood ash tea. The name is less important than the principle. Alkalinity dissolves in water. The mineral wealth inside ash crosses from solid into liquid through a patient soak. And once it is in liquid form, diluted to the right concentration, it becomes something entirely different from the raw powder. It becomes a mild, stable, mineral-rich drench that flows down through the soil, reaches the root zone gently, and releases calcium and potassium in forms that root hair cells can absorb without chemical stress. Here is the complete preparation, step by step, with nothing left out. Start with a clean 5-gallon plastic bucket. The container must be plastic or food-grade ceramic. The alkaline solution will react with galvanized metal, and a glass jar is too small for this particular preparation. The ash itself must come only from clean, untreated hardwood. Oak, maple, hickory, apple, cherry, walnut, any of these. Never ash from charcoal briquettes. Briquettes contain binders, accelerants, and coal byproducts that have no place near a food garden. Never ash from painted wood, pressure-treated lumber, or manufactured logs with chemical starters. Those ashes carry compounds that can accumulate in soil and eventually migrate into edible crops. The rule is simple. If the wood had anything applied to it before it burned, the ash does not go in the garden. Into the bucket, add 1 part clean dry ash to 5 parts water. 4 cups of ash to 4 gallons of water is a workable starting ratio for a full season of use. Stir thoroughly with a wooden stick for 2 to 3 minutes until the water turns a cloudy gray. Then cover the bucket loosely with a piece of burlap, a folded cloth, or even a sheet of cardboard weighted at the corners. Do not seal it airtight. Set it in a shaded corner where it will not be disturbed, and leave it for 3 to 7 days. During those days, something unhurried and important is happening. The soluble minerals in the ash, the calcium carbonate, the potassium carbonate, the magnesium compounds, are crossing from the solid particles into the surrounding water. The harsh raw alkalinity is diluting and stabilizing. At the end of 7 days, the heavy particles that were too dense to dissolve have settled to the bottom. The liquid above them has changed color. It is no longer cloudy gray. It is clear, or very slightly amber, the color of pale tea held up to a window. That amber liquid is the extract. Carefully pour it off into a second container, leaving the dense sludge at the bottom undisturbed. That sludge goes directly into the compost pile. The amber liquid is the product, but it is still not ready to touch the garden. One more step, the most important one. Dilute the extract at a ratio of 1 part concentrate to 10 parts plain water. The finished application liquid should look barely tinted. If it is still clearly amber after dilution, add more water. The goal is mineral delivery at a concentration that root cells can absorb without osmotic stress. Too concentrated, even this gentle extract can temporarily overwhelm feeder roots and cause the same leaf yellowing that dry ash causes, just more slowly. Properly diluted, it is safe to apply every 10 to 14 days through the entire growing season. There is a critical list of plants that must never receive this preparation. Blueberries, azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias, potatoes, and most ferns demand acidic soil to remain healthy. The ash extract raises pH. Apply it around these plants, and iron becomes chemically locked out of the root zone within weeks. The leaves turn a pale, ghostly yellow between the veins, the signature of iron chlorosis in an alkaline environment. Once that lockout begins, reversing it takes months of acidifying treatments. Keep the ash extract away from acid-loving plants entirely, without exception. For tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, zucchini, squash, beans, brassicas, and most flowering ornamentals, the diluted extract is not just safe, it is the most complete mineral supplement available at any price point. Applied at 3 specific windows in the growing season, it addresses the 2 mineral deficiencies that cause the most visible and most common failures in a summer vegetable garden. The first window is 2 weeks before transplanting into open garden soil. Drench the prepared bed with the diluted extract and allow it to soak in. This establishes the pH correction and mineral base before any root is disturbed. Moving a seedling into already corrected soil removes one stressor from the transplant process. The second window is at the first sign of flower buds. Potassium demand spikes sharply when a plant shifts from vegetative growth into reproductive mode. A potassium-deficient plant at this stage drops flowers before pollination can occur. Every dropped flower is a fruit that will never exist. A single application of diluted ash extract delivered directly to the root zone at the onset of flowering addresses the deficiency at the exact moment it matters most. The third window is when the first small fruits appear. This is when calcium demand is at its seasonal peak. The cells at the base of each developing fruit need calcium to build their walls correctly. Without it, those cells collapse. The black, leathery patch at the blossom end of a tomato is not a disease, not a pest, not a product failure. It is a calcium shortage at the moment of cell division. One application of diluted ash extract at fruit set is the most direct intervention possible for this problem because it delivers plant-ready calcium to the root zone within hours. This is what the lime bag cannot do. A bag of agricultural lime applied to the soil surface in spring begins releasing calcium slowly, incompletely, over weeks to months. The pH correction it provides is real but gradual. The timing of calcium delivery is entirely out of the gardener's control. The ash extract, applied as a liquid directly to the root zone, delivers dissolved calcium that root hairs can absorb within the same day. The correction is immediate. The timing is entirely under the gardener's control. This is the practical difference that no product label ever explains, because explaining it would require the manufacturer to acknowledge that a free alternative exists with superior timing characteristics. The fertilizer industry is not built on dishonesty. It is built on the assumption that the people buying the products do not have time to learn the alternatives. Most of them are right. A 63-year-old gardener standing in the lime aisle on a Saturday morning has no reason to think about hardwood chemistry. Nobody told her. The bag is right there. It costs $35. She buys it, goes home, and adds another year to a cycle that never needed to start. This video is for the gardener who wants to stop that cycle. Not to be contrary, not to save $35, though the savings add up over a decade of seasons, but because the alternative, the preparation that comes out of a fireplace and takes 7 days and costs nothing, actually works better. It works at a time of the gardener's choosing. It delivers 3 nutrients where the lime bag delivers 1. It builds soil biology instead of simply correcting a number. And every jar of it drawn from that bucket by the hearth is a small act of independence from an industry that profits, directly and measurably, from the assumption that gardeners need to keep buying what they already have for free. There is one more layer to this preparation. A pairing that takes the wood ash extract from a mineral supplement into something closer to what earlier generations of gardeners called a complete soil tonic. Coffee grounds. Used coffee grounds from the morning pot carry approximately 2% slow-release nitrogen in complex organic form. That nitrogen is not immediately available to plant roots. It is locked inside organic molecules that soil bacteria must first break down. When the bacteria arrive to do that work, which they do within days of the grounds entering the soil, they multiply. Where bacteria multiply, earthworms follow. Where earthworms tunnel, the soil structure opens. And where the soil structure opens, the diluted ash extract reaches the root zone faster and more completely than it would in compacted, biologically dead ground. The two amendments do not compete. They work in sequence. The coffee grounds recruit the biological workforce. The mineral drench supplies what that workforce needs to produce nutritionally complete castings, instead of nitrogen-only waste. Used together at the base of a tomato plant through a full growing season, they create something that no bag on any shelf in any garden center currently sells. A self-reinforcing cycle of biological fertility that leaves the soil richer at the end of the season than it was at the beginning. That is the opposite of what synthetic fertilizers do. And it costs, in total across the entire growing season, nothing beyond the time it takes to make a fire and brew a pot of coffee. The fireplace ash and the coffee grounds were going to be thrown away regardless. The bucket and the water were already in the house. The knowledge is the only thing that was missing. Now it is not. For anyone who tends a garden and wants to stop buying solutions to problems that came free of charge from a century-old tree, the method is here. Prepare the extract this week. Set the bucket in a corner and let it work for 7 days. Start with the tomatoes. Start with the peppers. Watch what happens by the time the first flowers open. The $70 billion industry will still be there next spring. So will the fireplace. The choice is the gardener's. If this is the kind of honest, evidence-backed reasoning that brought you to Rooted Grace, the like button and the subscribe bell keep this work going. Drop a comment below telling me which plants in your garden have given you the most trouble with pH, yellowing leaves, blossom drop, or poor fruit set. The next video in this series goes directly to the soil biology behind those symptoms and the kitchen preparation that addresses them at the root level. That one is coming next week. Until then, keep the fire burning and save the ash.